Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the afternoon session on Thursday of the Extraordinary Technology Conference 2013. Today it is my pleasure to introduce you to Aeron Goldheart. He will be speaking to fill us with information regarding the empowerment for self-healing. He hails from Denver, Colorado, and is on a mission to create a healing consciousness in the world. So thank you very much. Come on up.
Good afternoon. Hope you all enjoyed your lunch and that you're looking forward to hearing some things that are slightly out of the box. The way I operate as the CEO and global developer for Tesla Energy Lights was actually quite by accident, and it was because I have a passion for making things right and on a human basis. So I got involved with using the lights to heal my own depression. And once I was cleared after about 2 months of usage of the lights, I never went back. So I share that with you because we all have a personal story in our lives that are not necessarily health related. It can be about work, it could be about relationships, it could be about anything. Because what I learned is that subtle energy affects everything. In fact, I feel that subtle energy is the missing element. When we say there's 4 elements, I really feel like there's 5. As we say fire, air, earth, and water, and I feel like subtle energy is, just because we don't see it quite as vividly, it's still there. It's what makes us all be alive. If it leaves, well, we're not going to be here to be alive. So the same would pertain to animals and plants. So I respect what the inventors had brought to the surface. And I'll just tell you that their intention was to bring about consciousness. And they really stuck to it. Tesla Energy Lights, this has been in development for 20 years. So it's not new technology. It's actually very old technology being reborn. It came from the early 1900s where the violet ray was using a Tesla coil with argon gas. And our people said, well, if one gas works, what would happen if we put together a collection of them? Let's see what happens. So as it turned out, we invented the carousel, and the carousel has a number of inert gases, the same gases that we breathe. It comes from air. So therefore, it has a extreme permeability to our likeness because we already breathe it. So there's no rejection factor. That being the case, it's something that when we learn what we can do as participants becomes the real fun. And that's the part that I'm going to share with you today. That is how to be empowered by our own choice making. The equipment is something that is just a tool, but the real essence of it is us, the users. The first thing I want to point out is that high voltage versus high frequency. We see a lot of electrical aspects industrialized, which are very important. But when it comes to human beings, you don't put your finger in the light socket. The light socket is for machines, not humans. We use millivolts in energy for ourselves. So therefore, the counterpart to that is not electricity. Although it's part of the component, it's frequency. And the frequencies are coming from the tubes. These tubes are made out of quartz, okay? So the quartz enables us to have a clear dispersion of 100% of the frequencies that are emitting from the air. Just like the sun. The sun delivers vitamin D and other elements. These are our latest addition. They're the home version. They have a center tube which have air and mixed gases. And it's very soft. The ladies generally like soft. So it's a great way of having the energy without too much voltage. And really subtle is what we want. We want soft. It's kind of like when you go hug somebody. You can get a really soft hug or a really brisk hug, and most of us like soft. okay? We don't want to be knocked down like a football player. Most devices out in the marketplace are somewhat passive. You basically are receptors of whatever it has to offer. Well, when you make a decision as to how you want to set goals, then you're the interactive part. And that's what separates this from most other systems, okay? Your intentions. We have a polarized condition in our society. We have a lot of yang. Our dimension is about using two polarities. Why? Because we're made up of two polarities. Why would we not want to address what we are? We have an interstitial fluid nature that has positive and negative cell walls. So as a result, we produced first 20 years ago what we call a yang unit or a male unit or an AC unit, just all the same terminology, but the point is that it produced a surface energy that was very strong. So consequently, as other energy devices have been output, they'll have a single bias, and it can actually take a person out of balance rather than put them in balance unless it's calibrated with both a negative and a positive polarity. The black unit is a yin unit, and what we found is that by producing a yin to match the other counterparts that we have, that the synergy raises the potential level of our intentions. And why is that? Because what we have, according to Dr. Claude Swanson, who is one of our quantum physicists that evaluates equipment and remote usage, is that there's what's called torsion field. And then permeation is a valuable asset, because if you have energy that you're able to receive, then you can do something with it. If I gave you coarse energy, something that is not as coherent as you can receive, then it would just pass through you. If this piece of equipment put out streamers, energetically, it would be over balanced, okay? But ours does not. The intention, empowerment with source, is really the core issue of what I want to speak to you about, because it involves each and every one of us as individuals, from our belief system, our emotions, our minds, our hearts, and our souls. Love is my gift to the world. I fill myself with love, and I send that love out into the world. Okay, so that's an intention. And it came from Dr. Wayne Dyer, who wrote the book, The Power of Intention. It's eloquent. We all have our own intentions, and what we choose to do by materializing is the speed at which we are capable of. And that's one of the things that this type of subtle energy can support, is materialization. Some call source God or soul or spirit or consciousness. It has nothing to do with religion. I'm talking about a source of energy that lives within each of us, and we call it subtle energy. We also call it chi, life force, prana, torsion field, and there are a host of other names. The reason why there's so many names is because there are different individuals around the world that had discovered the causal body, the subtle energy body, the life body, what you want to call it, and they named it because they thought they were the only ones that had discovered it. But the fact is we now have a lot of different synonyms for the same essence. So what happens when our cell phone batteries go dead and we forget to plug in our charger? Do we throw out our cell phones? No. We just charge them up. Our meridians and our organs have different millivolts that we have energy, and that energy will be higher or lower. So one indicator would be if you have pain. It's a pretty good indication that we have low voltage. So what would happen if we raised that voltage in the cell? So a lot of times when people get on the lights, they have a sore shoulder or hip or whatever, and they will comment either during the session, after it, or maybe within an hour, how that has affected them in terms of their perception. And that right there is a chart that we see the lower and the higher. You can see there's a red kind of like, looks like arrows in the center pointing in. Those are the low points of energy that would be read on a device called a GDV. GDV is a camera that comes from Russia, We use it to show shifts. There's a camera in here. And we take pictures of the fingers, each finger, twice. And it takes pictures in an analog format and then changes them into a digital format. And the algorithms then depict those fingerprints that we're shooting, which are the causal body. And that's what we get as a result, detecting the parasympathetic and the physical. And what we see between the two is a stress level. So when there's a stress that's high, like from occupation or from lack of sleep or airplane rides, we see that can be shifted when we add subtle energy, because it helps restore what was basically taken out in the event that would have preceded it. So the green that you see on the outside is after a session. So you can see that in this particular case, it started to fill out. Okay? Does the gas we put in our cars tell us where to go? I think we all know the answer to that. No, it doesn't tell us where to go. We manage ourselves when we drive. And I bring that up as an example because we all put gas in our cars and the fuel is neutral. We have no expectations of it to fix us. Well then, in terms of the way we operate, why wouldn't we want to stay in control and manage all of our lives, including our wellness? Think of delicious red apples, okay? You want to buy at your grocery store. Just put that in your mind. Did you see them? You know where they are in the store because you probably bought them before. You know how to get to the store because you know where it is. But your body is not there until you go. But your mind is there already, like right now as you think about it. So what does that mean? It means that our bodies get everywhere last. Because if your body got there first, you could look around and not know why you're there.
Consider this. We naturally create from the non-physical to the physical in order. That is, with our thoughts, our feelings, and our beliefs. So then why do we try to fix the physical first instead of last to correct issues?
Subtle energy activation is the fuel we use to shift and manage our intention. What we do is we lay down. Why do we lay down? Why don't we sit up like you are in your seats? Right now you're in the beta state. And the beta state is supposed to be scrutinizing and questioning and wondering and becoming aware, documenting. It's very functional. But when it comes time to self-healing, what do we do every night? We lay down. And when we do that, we self-heal. The problem that we have today is cell towers, computers, in other words, all the EMF interferences, our TVs, our everything, even our smart meters reading our electricity. So do we really get an effective reconstruction of our parasympathetic, which is natural? We wake up tired, so how do we ever really bounce back? Vacations tend to be work. So when we lay down with the lights, we tend to go into an altered state. And I say that really more meaningfully. We really do. How you know that is when you get on the lights, if you come over and visit, you'll notice that the sound around you is louder than it seemed to be. Because when you close your eyes, your perception shifts. And when we close our eyes and start using intentions to become more available to ourselves, to what we're creating, we're exploring a world that sometimes we don't visit often enough. And it's in that peace and harmony of having our own space without someone pulling our chain that we become coherent and actually self-aware to the point where I'm feeling pretty good. Subtle energy is what we use also to manifest in the mental, emotional, and belief system, not just the physical. So that would be our relationships, our work, our play, our travel. resolution, our mission, what were we here to come to do? They all play in the subtle field. They're not physical in some cases. They're what we choose to be. And efficiency in high regard is very important. We all want to be our best. So to cap that out, if we feel more confident and we have more energy and we have more of our availability of ourselves, then we can be more available to others. And what's really interesting when we create for ourselves what we want in life is we attract it to ourselves. As Gandhi said, if you want to see love in the world, then become that love. So I'm a proponent of that and practice it. There are many subtle energy donors. The Tesla Energy Lights isn't the only one. You can take walks out in the sun and have water in your life with a lake or an ocean. You can go camping. You can do a lot of different things that are going to feed you subtle energy. How much time do you have to do that, though? You take about 10 minutes to do it here, what you would normally collect in an evening of sleep. So time can be a very essence, because today we all seem to be wanting to have our time. So here's some data and evidence of the shifts that we have collected over the last 7 years. This camera has been a miracle because it reads subtle energy. And what we're producing is subtle energy, so it's a match. Dr. Korotkov created this and has worked on it for 25 years out of Russia. So we've been happy to work with them. One of the tests that allows us to do is water. We've done several water studies with Dr. Swanson. And when we put in distilled water and measure it, this is an argumentative number of pixels, okay? Because all we're doing is we want the data in order to see the difference in the shift. So the number could be any number, okay? Because we could be using a different orifice to measure it with. But in this case, it was a vial. I believe it was 10 drops of water. And it came out to 11,789 in the baseline. Then we would charge it up on the lights, between the lights, for 15 minutes. That's a full session. And we would get about a 41% shift, which is 16,672 pixels. So that's equivalent to the way we would look at ourselves. What are we basically made up of? Mainly water. Only thing is that we have saline solution, water, and blood. So it would be more than 41%. I haven't taken anybody's blood out and measured it. I just did the water. So you'll have to just take it for what it's worth, that salt does attract more energy. Okay? This is Dr. Rakowski. He's a very well-known speaker and a hematologist and a chiropractor. And he runs what's called the BIA, a bioimpedance analyzer.
This is actually an FDA-approved device, and it measures electrical activity of the body, and from some very sophisticated software, then we can see how the cells have changed and how the body has changed. And if you see, I've got a graph that seems to go all over the place on the screen. We ran literally dozens of patients before and after on the Tesla lights, and every single patient that experienced the lights walked out of the room different than they walked in. Now, what's interesting is patients changed depending on what was going on in their physiology. We could see that some people experienced cellular detoxification. You could see that there was a fluid shift in the cells that would suggest that the body cleared toxins. I found that profound and really amazing. I had a level of skepticism as to whether or not these lights were going to be effective, and that changed literally within the first day. We saw every single patient change. Some patients, it was very clear that they experienced enhanced charge to their cell membrane. And it's generally accepted that healthy cells do a better job storing electrical charge. And people ask, well, what does it do? Well, it measures charge across the human body. We put a very slight electrical current through the body 50 microamps, and then we measure two numbers: electrical resistance, which is related to the amount of water in the body, and capacitive reactance, which is related to the cell's ability to store electrical charge. And that's where we saw changes in people. So if we go back to our graph here, the dots that are very close to one another actually represent different patients. We tested them literally before and after, and you'll see that the dots have interesting patterns. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down. Sometimes it's slight and sometimes it's more significant. But in all cases, the numbers changed. You know, I think the people that had the biggest impact in their changes in numbers were the very healthy and the very sick. You could see that the very healthy took the charge and really used it to revitalize their cells. And people would report, oh my gosh, I feel, you know, a tremendous boost. And then you would take people that were struggling with their health issues, and you could see that those folks detoxed. Some people got a heavy metal taste in their mouth, which I found pretty interesting. They had shifts of fluid, which showed that their cells were clearing toxins. Just a remarkable way to show that human beings changed with light energy. And my patients would say, how is this possible? I'd say, understand that life is energy, and the energy of life starts with light. And so these Tesla lights provide light of frequencies that, in my mind, indisputably impacts cellular health and function.
And by the way, we have over 100 videos. The videos on the website, which is teslaenergylights.com. We also have them on YouTube. The things you see on the website are a little bit more general and may be boring for you because you're all pretty up with technology. So if you want to see some better stuff, send me an email and I'll be glad to forward you that information, and you can look at a lot more juice. Dr. Swanson is on the website. He gives us about a 30-minute talk on...
We can now relate to something called torsion, which is a radiation that the Russians discovered several decades ago. So there are discoveries like that that are allowing us for the first time to have a scientific understanding of how energy medicine works. In my research and looking at human energy systems and trying to understand the science behind them, one of the areas that has been interesting to me are the Tesla energy lights. The question is how they operate and how they have benefit for people. There does seem to be some anecdotal evidence that they do bring benefits to people. The question is what the mechanism is. What appears to me is that devices like the Tesla energy lights, which are multi-wave oscillators that generate many different frequencies but all in balance with each other, when they are placed next to a person, a living system, our own multi-wave oscillator system that produces the many frequencies that keep our body in balance seems to resonate with the multi-wave oscillator of the Tesla energy lights. It appears that that one of the fundamental principles of life is that we do maintain this blueprint throughout our body that tells the cells in each part of the body how to grow.
We also have a follow-up of a homeless shelter where we placed the lights for 30 days. And what was really amazing in that 30 days is the responses that we got. We actually had alcoholics and drug addicts getting off of their bottle and stop their drinking. We had one gentleman that actually started that process several years ago and has stayed sober. So one of our 92-year-old owners wanted to donate to the shelter the use of his lights. And we found out that they work beyond our expectations. In other words, the gentleman had such eloquent things to say, I thought I was talking to a professor.
Possibilities, potentialities available through this energy light system. The skepticism was both honest and I think healthful. the fact that I feel or perceive support from this energy system, I think is also valid. But you're not going to be able to get a benefit from anything that you're skeptical of and walk away from. You've got to give it an effort. You've got to give it the option to present its potentiality to you. And that's where I think I am. In the beginning, what I was seeking was an ability to concentrate, an ability to focus, a reduction of stress for the situation that I was in. I was in a homeless shelter and feeling particularly, I won't say depressed, but down somehow. And I wanted to increase my energy. I wanted to raise my level of self-esteem. I wanted to be able to focus on a potential future. And that was what brought me to this system as a part of a support system. And interestingly enough, I have moved from the homeless shelter through a couple of agencies into a home of my own.
So that's on the front of the website also. It just goes to show you that it doesn't matter what stage of life we're in, it can help anybody. Okay, dark field. This lady on the top left had a very compromised condition. I don't know what it was. All I can tell you is that we took one drop of blood. You can see it on the video in the lab with the microscope. You see it immediately on the screen. It's gooky. And then we do a session, and the same person.
See how all your red cells are clumped together?
Mm-hmm. I told you they'd be sticking.
So when but it looks totally different. But obviously she still has a lot of toxins because of all of these, you know, all the bugs and all of the abnormal cells and the infection inside the cells. But it's certainly helped pull them apart. So I have a few little buggies hanging around out here. You see how these are the bugs inside the cell have been consuming the cell, and you see how it's smaller as they have lunch on the cell. Mm-hmm. Well, it's obvious the blood has changed since the first one. The first one, everything was all stuck together, and the second one, the cells are 80% now apart, and you begin to see the pathology inside the cells. So we've moved it a lot in the right direction.
On the lower right, you wouldn't know it's the same person. Now that's not so unique. You see the center of the cells look like a little white nut or something like that, the nucleus. When you use the lights for extended period of time, as I have in conferences, I'll be in a conference for 3 or 4 days, 8 hours a day, constantly giving sessions, because you come in, you get a session, you leave, right? I'm staying there. So you want to see what my blood looks like? It's kind of interesting. I was shocked. I had no idea. When they first looked at it, I thought, what's wrong? Well, what you see there is a pretty uniform geometric pattern, and they're all separated. And they looked at it, and they were oohing and aahing, and they were looking at the screen, and I said, what is the problem here? They said, well, it's the pattern that's inside the nucleus. I said, what pattern? So I had my camera. I was just shooting it for the lark. I had no idea this was going to be something that would be revealing. But you can actually count the little dots, the imprints of the energy in the cell. And I went and showed the doctors, the physicists, the MDs, what we found, and they looked at it and said, you've got a pathology, you're sick, what's wrong with you? And I'm going, I don't feel bad, I'm not sick, I don't have a problem. It's like, I don't believe you, stop it. So I still don't have an answer. But I can tell you this, the little bit of scientific that I have, because I'm not a scientist, I don't have a degree, I was a hypnotherapist. I mean, that's as good as it got, and that's not science in the same sense. Well, I had 2 other people in the booth. And I said, if they have the same indicators, we got something here. Because they were in the booth too for 4 days. They weren't doing as many sessions, but they were still there. And what do you know? We did them after mine, and sure enough, those same indicators popped up. So what that tells me is that if I'm disciplined and I'm true to utilizing these for improving my lifestyle, then it could help other people. So I can report that to you. And we have other support by Dr. Rain. He is among other physicists that have the distinction of speaking to the educational sector of the physics world. And he was dealing with the technology with two forms of reading the DNA, one remotely and one physically. And what he noted...
I sent him DNA, and I have some in my lab. We're talking on the phone, and he's measuring the etheric DNA, or the energy of the DNA, and I'm measuring the real DNA, the physical DNA. I'm just measuring the ability of the DNA to absorb light. We start the experiment. We used a Tesla light. The Tesla lights were used to activate the DNA. Ready, get set, go. He takes a measurement after activating the DNA with the Tesla lights, and I start my measurements. And then we both take measurements every 10 seconds. He's doing the etheric and I'm doing the physical. Okay, so the physical DNA is in the bottom and the etheric DNA is at the top. So here we have a couple of, I'm using the word plasma wave, but that's just kind of what comes off of the Tesla lights. So right about here, there's a blip, and both the physical DNA and the subtle DNA respond. And you say, okay, well, that's interesting. There's a correlation between the two. That's cool. But look what happens over here. The etheric DNA changes, but there's no change in the physical DNA. So that means, 3 clues. There's an energetic change that precedes, I would use the word, but same idea, precedes the physical change in the DNA. Well, whoa, that's important. I didn't mention that Peter Moscow is doing these experiments in Louisville, and I'm in New York. So we were 1,500 miles apart. They're connected at a quantum level, and the energetics can change first. Now that's a fundamental, important concept, because we believe, as I said in the introduction, that the energy is fundamental. Energy changes first, and that either causes the physical to change, or at least precedes it. And the practical application of this kind of experiment is, well, gee, if you can measure the energy, like all these examples I'm giving you, then you can diagnose disease before things happen in the physical, way before they happen in the physical. So this is the exciting application.
Because what that's indicating is that the cause is energetic and then the effect is physical. And that he brought to our attention. We weren't going for that as a test. It just happened to be revealed. Then Dr. Shealy. Dr. Shealy was here last year. If those of you that were here remember, he spoke. We connected, and he has a mat, a rejuvenation mat. And he uses 2 Tesla coils on each end. Nothing compared to our boxes, which have Tesla coils and many other attributes with the tubes. So I started using Tesla Energy lights with the mat. And what would happen is the mat would get so charged up that every time I would get off of it, I'd get a little goose, because, you know, my butt kind of fits into the mattress a little bit as I was getting up, or my hands would. And it is charged. In order to determine the reversal of telomeres with the DNA, it requires a full year of constant use and 2 readings, one before and one after. His net result was 6% minus the 1% we normally lose in telomeres per year, netting 5%. So my bet is that we probably could up that to maybe 8 or 10%. So can you imagine in 5 years getting 50% of your life back so you could keep on moving forward with the DNA that you have? That's theoretical. I don't know that that's true. But I think it's worthy. Because he's getting 5%, I think it'd at least be 25. Okay, so we also do EEGs. And EEGs is the oldest test in the book for brain waves. And what we found is that when we took a baseline with the theta and the alpha, that the alpha went up 88% and the theta went up 40. So what that meant is that in a 10-minute time frame, here we are getting an avalanche of rest equivalent to spreading it out over hours of time, which is why some people will get up and say, I feel like sprinting or cleaning my house or doing something that I'm not normally used to doing. This is an autism solution center where they've used the lights with neurofeedback. And neurofeedback is another process to get the autistic child to come off of the precipice. So that way they come down and they become calm, just like we all are. So what they're doing is looking at a movie to control their own behavior. Can you imagine that? A 10-year-old controlling his own behavior, who's radically high in his IQ and very low in his ability to handle life without getting spastic. The left is before and the right is after the lights. That's an actual test that we did on that little boy. And you can see that the left has a wider span, the right has a narrower span. So he was calming down. This lady is an RN and has diabetes. She contracted diabetes by having an implant in her tooth that became infected and was never diagnosed. So the infection traveled throughout her body and overcame her system to the point where she actually contracted diabetes. Don't know how that happened, but she had such high count on her glucose that she should have been dead. When I visited her, she was working on it, was doing very well, but while she was on the lights for about a week, her glucose came down to normal, and we've seen this many times. So we're not going to make any claims about it curing or healing the issue. It just simply is a data that we can represent that it shifts statistics. Okay, so the intention, the apps, lying down and standing up. You see a lady standing in the background. What she's doing is she's sending that intention to somebody that she loves. In other words, one can stand in front of the lights and be a conduit and allow the energy to come through and set the intention to send it remotely, whether it's across the street or 1,000 miles away. We got a protocol from Dr. in Irving, Texas, and he called me, and he calls me frequently, and he says different things that occur in his office that are amazing to him. But this one was about him, and it was about his relationship with his wife. It was on the rocks, and it was sure to go downhill. So he started using certain phrases and vocabulary, which I'm going to share with you because I took it off of his audio. He called me and I recorded it on the phone. And I'm happy to send this audio to anybody that wants it. So you can hear his words. I'm just repeating them. And he said, I saw my wife change her opinion of me. That was his visualization. That's how he started his campaign to save his marriage. I changed how I saw us instead of changing her. In other words, he wasn't trying to manipulate her reality, but he was looking at how he could better envision the outcome of his relationship. And he held her and tuned in intensely. Well, I got to tell you something. I'm typically intense, but when I lay down, I'm not so intense. And I have a hard time being intense when I lie down with the lights. So I don't know how he did it, but that's I have to remark, because I've worked on that on my own relationship many times. Knowing I am in the right place with the right person at the right time. So that's a pretty good acknowledgement, kind of like a release, assuming that he is in the right place at the right time. And in so fact, he was. He feels love, bond, and contentment. The love that he emphasized. And he did. He loved her. He didn't want to lose the relationship. And what he said is that she turned around and it just melted the barrier. And he was so happy about that. No judgment, just pure, clean detachment. He even mentioned his golf game changed. He was in the 100s and above, and he got it down to the 70s. And he said he was nowhere near capable of doing golf the way he was doing once he got in the zone, being in a different space. And I've had the same report from other people with golf, bowling, and running. In fact, I'm working on a video right now with an interview that I did out of a gentleman in Colorado Springs about 2 weeks ago, which will be being published very soon. So he said, then go out there, you're there, but your body is doing something totally different and it's automatic. In other words, he wasn't having to think about it because he had already decided and he was already in automatic role. It's our choice and intention to love. And I say that because we can measure it. The GDV has a little attachment, it's called a Sputnik, and it looks like little straight pins, like it's some kind of an antenna on a miniaturized space module that you'd send out into space that they would use for transmission. In any case, I could turn that on, measure the room. So the first part that you see on the lower left to about the center of the page is called the baseline, not telling anybody that we were doing it. And then we announced to the group, send love to each other. That's it. Nothing more special about it. We were in there in silence. And look what happened. It's kind of like a Geiger counter. It just went up. And it stayed up there until we finished the exercise. If we could do that as a group, and we can do it as individuals, that's very empowering. There's a shot of a couple merging, and it seems like every time we set up the lights, the people know that they can do that. They want to do that. And the way it works is real simple. You have eye-to-eye contact, which is soul contact. One can share love and connect, and many things can happen. Can cry, can laugh. I was in Las Vegas once, and the couple started to make out, and I went, wait, that's not what we're here for. And they were still making out when I got back. So it was like, okay, they didn't care what I had to say. Why is it possible? It's possible because he's in front of the male and she's in front of the female. So they're basically holding the energy of their nature and then merging. And if they had a fluorescent light bulb, it would light up between them. So sending remotely without time or space. Dr. Claude Swanson has a World Peace Initiative where he has a time clock as to when to send love and energy, and we support that. When we turn the lights on, it actually creates a grid with the other users. So we send out an email and share the potential of doing it at the same time for world peace. We also have educators, people that buy the system who want to share their system with others, either as in education or in a practice or just as a business. Our gentleman in Houston, his name is Bill Workman, he had 60 people that he was working on, and he said, you know, I don't have very much to report. He said, because nobody's getting sick. I said, well, isn't that the idea? And this was the first remote that we did that I got a report from a user in Sedona. He was sending energy to his autistic nephew in Michigan. So that was a good thing. So thank you for experiencing what I just had to say. The next step is I'm going to show you how the lights work. Are there any questions at this point that I can answer? Yes, there are many ways of measuring it. It has to do with the perception of the device that's being used. So it's only limited to that. So for example, if you use a tri-field meter, you're going to get its registration of electromagnetics, and you would get closer and closer, and you'd see it would be off the dial, and then you get back and you'd see it come back. So you would know where the range was for its perception. But then what happens is a person comes in, like the young lady back there that's just walking back there, and if I had these on and she was sensitive, and I've had this happen, she can feel it. Although the gentleman up here may not feel it because of his perception. So it gets to be very subjective. We have many ways of measuring. That's why I was showing you some of the different attributes that we've had over the years, because they all show a shift, and they're all showing positive shifts according to what they're capable of seeing. The EIS is another example of that. It reads the meridians and then reports on all kinds of body parts and 3D modeling, which is way over our head. So we stopped using that device, but it was an excellent means of measuring how a person shifted. It was very detailed in the toxic areas. So for example, from here down, you'd see a lot of dumping, and from here up, you'd see a lot of energy rising. So what that suggested is we don't have as much toxicity on the upper part of our body.
Why are you using two, and what happens when you use only one, and what is the key difference between them besides the color?
Good question. Okay, we initially started making what we call an AC, or a male unit, and it has a surface energy where you can feel it stronger, okay? But it doesn't go deep. It basically raises your, it's like having a cold glass of water. You know, it wakes you up. It makes you feel more alive. It has some value in raising cell voltage, where a person that is uncomfortable with a situation that they may have, they feel better afterwards. The yin unit it operates from the inside out. So the yang is outside in, like a conventional oven. Inside out would be like a microwave. It's not microwave, but I'm just giving you a comparison. So it doesn't feel as strong. Ironically, the yin is stronger. It actually creates a detox, regenerates, releases the heavy metals. It helps get into the pockets deeper, because the waveform is what we're talking about. So we use two of them together because it creates a closed circuit. It's just like the light bulbs up there. Every light bulb has to have a ground and a live wire. Every one of us have had two parents, a male and a female. So it's constructive with the way we live in duality, the way our brains are split. You know, everything seems to be most of what we have is a lot of it is in pairs. So this pair we found basically because the initial unit that we had some issues that we learned were not where we were wanting to go with it. It was too much. It was too strong. It was too much voltage in the sense of electricity. So we lowered that. And then we put in tubes that would be much more influential. Okay? Did I answer your question? Okay. Go ahead and take your shoes off. We generally want to take off metal and belts and cell phones so it does not absorb the energy that you want. He's holding the crystals. The crystals are made inside the units to eliminate and neutralize EMFs. Every single piece of gear that we have generally puts out EMFs unless it's protecting. And unless you're told it's protected, it's probably not. Now we're talking about hair dryers, refrigerators, computers, the whole thing. We do about a 3-day resin cure to protect that from our users. So the ones that are holding have magnets in them, and the magnets create their own field to help him deliver a stronger intention. So if you were laying on a river and the water was going from head to toe, we have the sender, the male, the female, the receiver, closed circuit, just like a filament being lit up. He's getting enlightened, okay, on multiple levels, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, as well as physically. So we turn these on, and you start seeing different colors. They're the different gases that are coming from the air, that are separated out. And the instructions that I recommend is take all your stress, the drama, the things that have happened in your life, your whole life. Let me come over here, maybe it'll be easier on the sound. And let it go down the river. In other words, visualize you releasing those energies downstream as bubbles. And when you do that, you're creating a space. Now, as we all know, we've heard the universe abhors a vacuum. So do you want the universe to fill it, or do you? Do you want to manage what is put in there? I would think so. So what you do is you look at your relationships, your job, or your mission in life, your income, your profession, your family, where you travel, what you're going to build, maybe a house, maybe buy a car, maybe open up a wellness center, maybe have a Tesla invention. Whatever your heart's desire is, those are your goals. You feed yourself with this energy to produce that, just like you would if you had money, except it's energy. And that raises the standard of drawing it in with the law of attraction, as well as divine providence. Because when you make a commitment, guess what? The universe steps up and starts sending you what you need. So your belief system gets a nice bump. Oh, and by the way, yes, your wellness too, I forgot. You see, it's only a piece of everything we are. So if we stay well and we keep going, we have more life. And our hearts know the difference when you have availability to express yourself from the desire of your deepest part. The head trip is no longer the only trip you're going to take. It's part of it. It's the rest of you that counts. And I invite you to experience that when you come and get a session. So that concludes what I have to offer you today, and the rest will be on the other side. Thank you.